if we will feel sick or get the flu, so we have to use paid holiday.
You have to use paid holidays?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not sure if this isn't the case in some places in Europe. So the productivity could go down, pressure to not leave until your colleagues go, creates an atmosphere that adds a little bit of extra stress, and through that will reduce the effectiveness and productivity of people who work at it.
Hey, thank you for your time today. And I'm Kazuki. And what's your name?
My name is Voy.
Boy, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm glad to meet you. And where are you from?
I'm originally from Poland.
Okay, nice. So are you traveling here?
I'm
Okay.
traveling here through Malaysia, yeah.
All right. So how many days do you plan to stay here?
So around 2 months, then the visa expires and we're gonna try to renew it in some other country and come back for another 2 months. So altogether about 4 months.
All right, okay. And I will ask some questions about the work environment in your country, or like some, I think, so if you have several experience, several countries working experience, so you can answer all these questions about that.
Okay.
Yep. And the first question is, are you an employee or self-employed?
I'm self-employed.
Okay. If you don't mind, could you tell me what is your job?
Sure, I'm a software engineer and
Okay.
I work as a contractor. I provide software engineering contracting services to companies and individual clients.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then from now on, so I want to ask about the paid holidays. Yep. So in Japan, the law ensures a minimum of 10 paid holidays per year after 6 months of starting job. Yeah, but many people don't take them all due to high pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, so from boss or from colleagues or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many paid holidays so do you or do your how can I say countries people get per year, and what's the legal minimum in your country?
Okay.
Yep.
So since I am self-employed, like I mentioned,
Yep.
I don't have minimum or maximum amount of holidays that I can take per year.
Yep.
Essentially, the way it works is that if I decide to go on holidays, I go on holidays and I discuss that with my clients, or I do not take any clients for that time.
Okay.
Therefore, I can stretch it. But obviously, these are all unpaid holidays. If I don't work, I am not being paid by anyone.
Okay.
Right? So it works out just a little bit differently when you have a structure like this. However, from what I can recall from the times I've been working back in Europe,
Okay.
it's anywhere between, I think, 21 and 28 days per year that
year.
you'll be getting, which will depend on the country, your situation, and as to whether it's given to you directly from the start or after several months. Again, I think it will depend on the country and on the company you're working for. But I think, something around between 20 and 30 days a year you're being given.
It's a minimum
I believe, yes. I believe that this is something that it is provided to you by law, by the country, and each employer has to give it to you.
Okay.
Although I haven't really been employed in any of those countries myself directly for quite a while now, so possibly a lot of these things are out of date and might have changed already. Yeah.
It sounds very flexible, and
On my end, it's quite flexible.
I
Yeah.
hope I can get it like you.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And do you get the paid holidays immediately? I mean, so usually, do people can get immediately paid holidays after joining the company, or or after some months since you joined the company?
Honestly, I wouldn't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yes, it's all right. And okay, the next question is, yes, most Japanese people don't use paid holidays or paid holidays. They can use it, but so as I told you, so some pressures, that's why Japanese people don't take all holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for if you, how can I say, have the paid holidays, so do you have to use them all within a year or not?
Yeah, so as far as I remember, I don't think people don't use them because there's pressure that's coming from the company. It's more that due to planning reasons, maybe somebody just didn't plan their year around so that they would have holidays. I know that in some companies, there are structures in which your holidays would carry over to the next year.
Okay.
So let's say you have 20 holidays per year, you only used up 10, those 10 may be moved over to the next year. That being said, some companies only limit that to a certain amount. So let's say if you haven't used up 20 days of your holidays it's not like the entirety of that will be moved to the next year. Maybe only 6 or 7 or 8 days will be moved over to the next year. So I do remember cases when I was employed back in Europe where people were trying to use up these holidays because they knew they would be lost. So around Christmas period, when the year ends, usually that's when a lot of people would take holidays just to be able to use them up. But that being said, I don't think that saving them up or like not being able to use them came from the fact that there was some pressure coming from the company itself, and it would be looked down upon if you used up any of your holidays, seeming that you're not dedicating yourself to the company, which I assume is implied here. Yeah, I don't think, at least in my experience, I've never heard of anything like that.
Okay, all right. So usually like people use paid holidays for their family or like the friends or like that.
Yeah, simply for their own reason. I do know friends who take a week of holidays and do nothing. They just need to rest. So, it can be completely up to you, personal reasons. But oftentimes, it's about going on holidays somewhere, actually flying off, venturing onto a little journey, or spending time with family along these lines,
All right, thank you. Okay. And all right, so this is like Japanese situation. Like in 2019, the government required people to take 5 days off as part of work reforms in Japan. So, but it's often difficult to take them all at once. In the end, most people end up taking 1 day off a time throughout the year. What do you think about this compared to your company, like Japanese situation?
Sorry, could you repeat the first part?
Okay. Like in 2019, the Japanese government required like employee, like people in a company to take a minimum like 5 days off, like in a year.
At least 5 years a year, they have to do it.
Right, they have to. So, I mean, like the last sentence, like, what do you think about this situation compared to your country? So it means like the 5 minimum days is, do you think like it's very short or like it's not enough or not?
So I think if it's obligatory, so you have to take these holidays and like it's implied by law, maybe there is something I wouldn't agree with over there in that, if you don't really want to or have no reason to take holidays, maybe you could disrupt your workflow. I can understand that some people are very passionate about their projects and really don't want to take that kind of holidays. On the flip side, I think in terms of like work ethics and just having a healthy, lifestyle, it is important to take some holidays every now and then. So I think there is some good in government trying to implore people to do that. Now, if we talk about the number and seeing that it's only 5 days per year, I think it's, to me at least, it seems quite clear that this is not sufficient. Especially as I mentioned, as a person who can take holidays as often as needs to, I think, I oftentimes would take holidays during my working month. But then maybe if I have a weekend that's available, I would work them back. So I think a lot more flexibility around that works quite well. But I would easily estimate that, sometimes I would take between 2 and 8 days per month of holidays on my own schedule, where 5 days a year would seem completely inappropriate.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And the next question is, so do you think like the in your country or like other country, the people usually take them all at once or like split?
I wouldn't know. I can only speak of my own experience. I remember splitting it up into segments. If you have 20 days, that kind of accounts for 4 weeks you can take, because it's only 5 days you really need to use up to take a whole week off and go somewhere for 7 days, including the weekend. So I would usually have about 4 weeks that I would take throughout the year on different occasions. I don't think I would ever take it as just a lump chunk of holidays.
Thank you. And so in your past experience, like when you apply holiday, so in your past experience, so when you apply holidays, so to your company or boss, so do you inform your boss directly, or did you use like software, like the system? So do you remember that?
Yeah, it was both. Depending on the company, it's either one or the other. Both methods I think are pretty common.
Okay, so all right. Like, so you have ever used like both, like to inform like boss directly, or?
Yep, it happened to me where I had to go directly to the boss, and I wouldn't say you request it as much as you say I'm going to be taking holidays, and boss just kind of double checks if that works out with the rota and the schedule, and normally there are no problems of taking these holidays. But sometimes this goes through a software, which obviously then reroutes it either to someone at HR or to the boss themselves. So I think it's a similar system in both cases.
Okay, thank you. And has your boss ever discussed or like discuss? No. So has your boss ever like complained your like vacations or something? So your vacation or like the holiday plans ever?
I cannot recall a single time in my experience. No, and I can't recall any of my colleagues at companies mentioning anything like that. But I can imagine how this could be something that exists all across the world, where bosses could be a little bit more difficult about granting holidays. However, it's never happened to me or anyone I know.
Like so in Japan, like mostly so in my previous company, like my boss so dedicated themselves to the company. So that's why like so if I like claim my paid holidays, some bosses like tell me like so you don't need to get paid holidays. So that's why like so that's why like this question is.
I understand. Yeah. It's completely cultural related. So I wouldn't be able to, I think, explicitly judge whether one is better than the other. Because if this is what rooted in the culture and people accept that, then I suppose I'm not here to be able to comment on that. I just grew up with a different system. But it is definitely something that is very different to what I'm used to, even back those years back when I did used to have permanent employment.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. And okay. Yeah. Like so, I think this question is you already answered. I think. But so if you know, like, do your like country's people like employee often use their paid holidays to travel abroad or other like purposes?
They definitely travel abroad. Yeah, that's very common.
Okay. All right. Okay, and in your experience, in your past experience, so do you? Does your boss contact you about work while you are on a vacation? Have your boss ever like tried like to contact while you are?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, really?
No.
No bothering.
No, I did work in the hospitality industry. I was a bartender for some time. So that was obviously very different to being a software engineer and working for engineering companies. As a bartender, sometimes you get pinged on your day off.
Okay.
Not necessarily holidays, but on your day off, saying that, we're short on staff and maybe you could come in and help out, which I suppose would be the closest to your boss pinging you while you're on holidays. But when you actually have your dedicated holidays, I cannot recall a single time when this has happened. I think in some maybe key scenarios where, there is some essential system that depends on your input that maybe doesn't work when you're on holidays, that you may be required to to be brought back into the company for help. I can imagine how this could work. Some nuclear scientists working at a nuclear plant, I can totally see how it makes sense for them to be brought back from the holidays when that happens.
I can imagine that.
But I don't think in majority of industries this would be something that would be acceptable and normal, and I can't recall a single time of that happening.
Yeah, but like it depends on the people, role, and like the industry, like that.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah,
I think so. Okay, thank you. And our next section, the question is like regarding sick leaves. Yeah. Actually, I've never heard of like sick leave in Japan.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why like, do you have sick leave in your countries, like or your country's law and in your company?
Yes, absolutely.
Really. Okay. So as I told you, like in Japanese law, there are no specific regulations regarding sick leave, and as Japanese people are not familiar with like these concepts. So could you please kindly explain about the sick leaves?
So there is a certain amount of days that you're able to take, I think, without any further explanation. So I think it depends on the country and the system you work in.
Okay.
But I would imagine between 2 and 3, 4 days, you can just say, "Hey, I'm not feeling well," and no questions are asked beyond that point.
Oh, okay.
In some cases, if the period for which you need to take the sick leave is longer, you need to actually have a written document from a doctor that confirms that. Again, this would be very dependent on the company or on the country. And in my experience, I never needed to use this kind of form. So it was mainly that if I felt sick, I was just feeling under the weather, is when I would just message the bosses and saying that I would be unavailable.
Okay, thank you. So, is it paid full amount of your like salary? Like paid
Sick leave?
Yeah, sick leave. Okay.
In my case, yes.
All right. So, is it common to take sick leaves for like fake illness?
Absolutely, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen like those?
I've done it myself. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. It's usually when you try to request holidays and you feel like unjustly you're not being given that. I know that people do that, and I have done that myself when I worked as a bartender. But this would probably account to maybe 10% of the times when you actually take a sick leave. But it does happen.
Okay. All right. So okay. So and the next one is like what? So like what if question? Yeah. Like what would happen if you take sick leaves for like a longer period? Like for example, like 1 month or 2 months. Could it like affect your promotion or like evaluation?
So I wouldn't know from first hand. It's never happened to me.
Okay.
I can imagine that this could affect your promotion and evaluations, yes. However, I have no idea as to whether it actually does or not. I'm just guessing.
Okay. So okay, yeah. In Japan, we if we will feel sick or get the flu, so we have to use paid holiday.
You have to use paid holiday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure if this isn't the case in some places in Europe. Like now that you said it, it rings a bell. I don't know if someone told me a story like this.
Right, but I think so.
But if this is common in Japan and there's absolutely no way to take a sick leave,
Yeah.
then yeah, there is a striking difference between I think how some of the countries in Europe work, where you do have dedicated sick leave that you can take.
Okay, thank you. So in the next question section is like regarding overtime working. The first question is how many hours do you work per day and how many days do you work per week?
Okay, so in my current setup, the way I work, it varies. It's very flexible. If I feel like I would like to make a little bit more money or I want to dedicate myself a little bit further into the project, there's a deadline that I need to meet, then I'm flexible to, put a little bit more effort in there. I try to use 40 hours per week as a baseline, which accounts to about 8 hours a day. And I'm trying to include lunchtime, so about half an hour of lunchtime. I think this is a pretty standard measurement used across Europe. There could be, variations, plus minus 1 hour here or there per day, but I think 8 hours is a good estimate. If there is a need to be putting a little bit extra work, I have put in anywhere between 10 and 12 hours.
Okay.
However, currently, seeing that the workload that I have right now is relatively small, I tend to scale them down, especially when I work on my own projects. I try to strike a pretty healthy work-life balance. So it may go as low as 4 hours a day in some cases. However, if I work for a client, I usually tend to ramp these hours back up again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it will be around 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week.
And how often do you work overtime? Like, and how many hours in a day? I mean, a maximum or like...
Sure. So like I mentioned, anywhere up to 12.
Okay.
So that would make up to 4 hours of overtime a day. But this wouldn't last more than several days. This, I'll do it maybe once a month, twice a month.
Right. And so in your country, like are there laws regulating overtime in your country? Like, so those regulations does your company have?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. It's okay. Yep. Yeah. In Japan, so this is like our situation. Like in Japan, one of the reasons for frequent overtime is the atmosphere where it's difficult to leave until your coworkers or your boss leave.
Yeah.
How is it in your country?
I don't think I've ever experienced anything like that.
Okay.
And people that I work with, or I just know any of my friends who still work back in Europe, I don't think they experience similar type of environment. Personally, I think it would be pretty unhealthy to feel this kind of pressure,
I think so.
External pressure. Yeah.
So usually like people can leave anytime.
Absolutely. And I personally would highly encourage that.
All right. Okay. So it means like no pressure from anyone.
Yeah, no, we should be judged based on the merit of what we deliver rather than on the amount of hours we put in.
Yeah, but sometimes so like it depends on the like project or something.
That as well, or just somebody's well-being, Maybe, you're going through a difficult time with your family, so your productivity could go down. In either case, there are some days when you can spend 4 hours and deliver as much as you would have on 12 hours on another day, sitting around and chitty-chatting and, having coffees and, just taking time off during the day. So just measuring it by hours is not essentially the most effective way to do it. I think along with reviewing the hours, you should also review the type of work that is being done and correlate those and compare these across months to be able to figure out whether somebody's being effective and productive rather than just looking on hours themselves, which is where this kind of pressure to not leave until your colleagues go creates an atmosphere that adds a little bit of extra stress, and through that will reduce the effectiveness and productivity of people who work at these companies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and the last question, is perspective of work. So in Japan, there's an expectations to...
So your productivity could go down.
As I told you, like the most Japanese people are so dedicated themselves to your company or the project.
Yeah.
Or boss sometimes. So, do you have a similar sense of loyalty and describe to contribute to companies in your country right now?
Yeah, so I think it's a very tricky question. I think this would be very heavily dependent on experience of an individual.
Yep.
I know that in the Western culture, if you can say that, especially in North America, I do know of some cases of companies that require you to have that kind of level of dedication, and if you do not put the overtime, and if you don't like squeeze every single drop of your will to be able to deliver something, you're not considered as a candidate. They want this kind of overworking culture. And I suppose those companies can deliver some incredible feats, so I'm not in a place to be able to judge it. I personally believe that having some level of dedication is important. However, again, it's very important to strike that balance and know when work shouldn't influence your personal life. At the same time, I think this heavily depends on whether the job is aligned with your own personal talents and preferences. I totally have seen, even myself, working for a company that was similar in industry, similar in the type of work I was doing, but just because of the internal workings of the company, in one case, I was 100% dedicated and passionate, and I totally could see how, that was my own personal involvement with the company, right? Was in the other case, I was disconnected and I didn't really care about any accomplishments, and I just wanted to, do my work, get paid for what I'm doing, get along with one or two people, but that's kind of where the relationship finished, right? So it is quite dependent on whether the alignment happens between your values, your talents, your preferences, and what company can offer in terms of the type of work you'll be doing, very importantly, but also the company culture, right? So I have good experiences with some companies where it totally was the case, and the best comparison I can give is where I would think about the projects that I had to do on Monday when it was Sunday evening, and I caught myself doing that, and I'm thinking, hey, this is great, like I'm really enjoying this work, this is really passionate, and I feel like I'm dedicating myself into it. So it would be similar to how what you mentioned is happening is Japan, at least to some degree, right? But I don't think this would be very common amongst a lot of the people working for doing different kind of jobs across the world. At least that's my gut feeling. I wouldn't have any data to confirm that, but I don't think that people have that much level of dedication, or it's not expected of them. It's more, just turn up, do your thing, and we're hoping that some pizza and a yearly meetup is gonna fix all the problems that you may have. I'm exaggerating here, and like I say, I don't have first-hand experience for a very long time doing this kind of work, so I wouldn't know. But I think, there are these discrepancies and there are these similarities in both cases.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and this is last real final question. Sorry. What are your thoughts on Japanese work culture and the way Japanese people work compared to your company?
Based on what I previously knew, or based on the questions you just asked me? The first one?
The first one,
So I think in general, the type of culture that I have heard of myself regarding the sort of East Asia's work culture is that, probably a lot of it will be stereotyped and things that you kind of hear on the media, and a lot of it may not be true, but, you do hear that there is quite a significant increase in amount of hours you're expected to put per week, per day, which aligns with some of the questions you ask. I heard, for instance, that in China, it's quite common to do 6 hours a day instead of just 5. So there are these discrepancies when compared to, the culture that I'm accustomed to. When it comes to Japan directly, I don't have that much information. However, some of the things I did hear about, they do indicate, at least to me, a few conclusions I can make based on this little information, is that it is definitely a lot tougher. There's a lot more expected of you. You probably will put longer hours, and the dedication you're expected to have to the company you're working for would be stronger.
Right.
That's my gist. That's kind of the feeling I have. Based on just scrap some information I had before. But honestly, having to mention, neither have I worked for a Japanese company, or have I really had experience with people that were working for Japanese companies, nor have I been to Japan. So all those answers are very anecdotal.
Thank you. And thank you for your time.
Okay, no worries. Glad I could help. All right.